Oh, good. And I worked here at the main newspaper in Brazil, that's Folha de São Paulo. Nowadays, I'm a columnist at WEDO, at the main digital news. And I also did a master degree at Schumacher College in the UK. And I like to tell this here because here I don't have to explain to you that holistic is not a mystical thing. It's rather a scientific view that can integrate things. So I share with you many of the challenges of communicating because I'm also looking for this holistic perspective that can integrate integrates environmental and social aspects of reality. And I've been trying to do that before and after the master course. A bit before that, I built a website that was called Women Sustainability, and I was really trying to connect those dots and show those stories. But it's super hard to get it to the mainstream. That was also always my main goal. And that's what I've been trying to do for the last 10 years, working at the medias with the general audience. And now I'm working at the next question. That's an organization I created to expand these voices. I put a bit of those pictures here also to tell you that I'm also, as you are, in very different environments. So at one day you are in the middle of the rainforest, getting stories from the communities very linked to the territory, and the other day you were at the UN conference trying to dialogue with diplomats who don't have a clue about what's happening in the territory. So making those links is something that I think we have in common. And another thing that I think we both reporters and advocates have in common is the many times the threats and the attacks and being under threat because of people that we are bothering. So I think from this perspective of both of us trying to reveal something that is challenger, that's problematic, that's challenging power specifically, is a point that can connect us. And so what I'm proposing along this training here is that we can depart from this bonding place so we can work as allies. It's a very different place from organizations like companies or public power. So I think we can build a very specific and special relationship with press, being allies of the news. We can move ahead on this. Thank you. So that's a message that it can be the previous. Thank you. That's a message that I like to emphasize. Don't expect carrier pigeons. I want to emphasize that the don't expect carrier pigeons message. I think it went super fast. I can go back. Thank you. Because I get this many times from my sources. The idea that our work as press, as reporters, is to get the correct message and pass it along. And I understand that's the need many times, no, right? I know what's happening, so just trust me what I'm telling you and go along with this message. And this is a linear expectation. It's like the reporter is getting the red bit of information and not adding any other bit and not thinking over it and not contrasting it with other perspectives. And this, maybe this place can be today occupied by social media, but that's not the job of a journalist. So I put those puzzles in the background because that's how I like to see my work. I like to see myself as someone who's trying to connect the pieces of a puzzle to form a clear view of what's going on. So that's my question. It's what's happening. So I trust some sources to be the ones who are not just giving a bit of that reality, just like giving me a piece of that puzzle, but also helping me to think what's really going on. Like how should I put those pieces together? So when I suggest to you that you can all be allies of the news. What I'm suggesting is that we should see beyond the message. We should see the agenda. So when you can look to the agenda we have, like what you want to move in the agenda, what direction you want to this agenda, so you can help the reporter. That most of the times is not a specialized reporter, it's someone who just starts to understand what's going on in this story, and it needs someone to lead. Uh, so you can be the ones who's like really helping to piece together those puzzles, and telling the reporter like, come here with me, like you can think a bit more about this connection here. Did you realize that one? So I think it's a very comfortable, much more comfortable place to be than the one who is like just getting interviewed and getting the questions and trying to prove to someone else if you're able to answer that or not. And rather you can just like trust your authority and give a class, and help this reporter, this poor reporter, most of the times, because we most of the times we don't have a clue about what's going on. So you can definitely help us to understand this story. So we can move forward. Thank you. So if you were not carrier pigeons, like what's the press doing? What's the mission that we're trying to accomplish? I think we have those three main missions. The first one is to filter the information. So we daily receive dozens of emails with suggestions of stories, press releases, incredible people that we should interview, companies and organizations doing incredible things that we should look at, government as well. So the first part of our job is to filter what's valuable, what's newsworthy. The second mission is to review. So it's a more of an investigative work of really dig deeper and review something that's relevant and new to the public interest. And the third mission is to translate, is to get something that's very complicated, technical, like climate change, and translate to the wider audience. So when you have in mind that our mission is not just to get messages that's message that are already ready and then go along with that, but rather it's this more complicated work of filtering what's relevant, then digging more to reveal something that's not yet known, and then translate it to a wider audience. I hope it gets a more complex picture of our work. So in the next slide, I want to share a bit more about how we think to filter and review what's relevant to become news. So those are some newsworthiness criteria that we use, we learn at graduation, and we use at a daily basis. And I think you should have this in mind every time you are suggesting a story to a reporter. So the first one is this hot story, is an urgent thing? Is something that's happening now, and that tomorrow is not going to be news anymore? It should be told, now or this week or soon. So this is the first thing we have in mind. It's something that's like, and that's why climate change is something so difficult to tell at the press, because it's an unprecedented crisis, but it's happening slower than the rhythm, the daily rhythm that we have at the news. So the newsrooms. So most of the times we were not like finding the story to tell that day. It's not happening that day. It's happening along the central. So that's why most of the times the chance we have to tell a story that's happening over time is during COP, or when you have a disaster, a climate disaster. But that's not the kind of opportunity we are looking here, because we have like this solution-oriented story to tell, right? The second criteria is something that should be exceptional. I don't like this criteria. I'm just passing it along as a carrier pigeon, though. But that's how newsroom works. Unfortunately, like they look for, they understand that story, a news story, is something that's is not happening all the time. It's exceptional. It's something that comes out of the pattern. I deeply disagree with that. I think that's a problem, a very a big challenge for climate journalism, because what we're trying to denounce here is a system, as a pattern that's not working. So we have to deal with a criteria that says that we have this kind of this small joke that we learn at the classes at the graduation journalism, which is if a dog bites a man, there's no news. But if a man bites a dog, then we have news. So this is I think this creates a distortion in your reality, because many times we are reporting stories that are extraordinary, but they don't represent the big challenges we have ahead as a society. So we have to deal with this challenge of looking for some aspect of the story that can look exceptional, that can attract people's eyes, because there's something different here. It's not like the same every day, blah, blah, blah. So we have to deal with this criteria to get like a headline, to get something that we're going to click to see, that we're going to have more attention. The third criteria is the political dimension. That's something that I like to put. It's not everybody that's talking about this criteria, but I've been realizing that in my work. Like every time that I can get some news that could be told by the scientific aspects, but I bring a bit more the political aspects, it gets more attention, it gets more relevance. It goes like it gets the highlights at the newspaper, because it can show, when you get the political layer of the story, we can highlight the conflicts, the prominence. So I mean, the big figures, the powerful figures that are involved in this story. So that's something that also helps to call attention to the story. The other ones are proximity, so how close the audience are from that story. Human faces and stories, like the sense of something that's not just scientific and hard data, but also carries some emotional aspect, because you have some characters, some human faces that you can relate as an audience, and you can feel that it could be you living that. And the impact of this story, that's how many people are affected. So what's the dimension of that fact on people's lives? We can go to the next one. Mm. I wanted to share a bit more with you about how we live today, how we survive today as a reporter, because I think this context can help sources to be more present. Uh, I've been seeing for the last decades the newsrooms becoming overworked. So we have less budgets, less people working, fewer people working, and my colleagues who are working in the newsrooms, they are producing like 3 to 4 stories a day. So this context takes us to a reality in which the reporter will not pay so much attention or deeper attention most of the times to deeper or complicated stories. Like they need something most of the times very like quick to be used. So it's unfortunate, like, but we see each time more newsrooms just getting like the press releases and pasting that. So the more we are able to get this work almost done and just deliver like a clear news, higher are the chances that we get space in the media, because we have this awful situation there with this overworked newsrooms. The post-pandemic methods are also something that change the relationship between the source and the reporter. because those newsrooms realize that we can work very well at home. So we don't need to be, I also think this is unfortunate, but we don't need to be in the fields, going to meet the source. So we are doing every time more work over the phone, over WhatsApp messages, audio messages, and something that we can take advantage of, something that can make you more available to the reporter. And talking about availability, that's something that's I think the gender makes a difference here. I've been seeing so many times the most of my sources are men, even though I work in a field of climate that we have, like, you know this better than me, we have like so many strong work being done by women. But I was thinking about this difference, like why every time I am putting more men in my reports than women. And one of the aspects I've realized is that they are often more available. Like I have a last minute report to deliver like in 20 minutes, and can I call you? Yeah, sure, you can call me. You know, like they are very much available to last minutes call, to send an audio at night or over the weekends. And that's some difference that I think we should be attentive of, because being available is something that really makes a difference, especially in this context of chaotic newsrooms, in which we have so little time to conclude this story. So many times we go for the one, like, I know this guy always, always pick up the phone. So I'm gonna call him and I'm gonna solve this last minute urgency I have here just to publish the next story, So being available is one thing that makes a difference. And the other one is daring to speak about topics in a very confident way. I think that's also a gender difference in reaching someone who I know that's going to say something about that, and reaching someone that's sometimes going to say, "Oh, that's not really my topic," and going to decline, which is fine. But I'm just saying that, like, many times we have more men more available to talk even about things that they don't really know about. But that's not something that I'm encouraging, of course, but is something that makes them being more many times being the ones who people are looking for. So my message is only like as much we can be available to exchange messages, and with someone reporting you trust, of course. But the more you can, like, send an audio, being available to, I can clarify that later if you want. This helps a lot to build this relationship of alliance. Sorry to get super long. So the next context is still in this slide, is this aspect we have in the last decade, that we have this climate coverage on the rise and the political polarization shaping narratives. So that's something that also creates a higher competition for news in this sector. Because we have each time more space to talk about about climate issues in the press, both because we have disasters which are worsening, but also because of this political polarization over this topic as well. No? So why is this is not exactly an opportunity, but rather a challenge, because we have so many new organizations starting to work with climates. So this creates like a competition, because everybody suddenly starts talking about climate. So we have like financial funds, banks, or like everyone has like a work or something to say about climate. So this creates like a overflow of stories and people available to talk about this topic. And on the other hand, this political polarization scenario makes reporters tend to report on this kind of denial or threats to cut funds or Trump influencing something. So we get more of this scenario of this political polarization than to the structural work of climate. Let's talk about the real issues, but unfortunately, it will get much more space to those, like I call it, invented problems. So some crazy guy creates a law project to prohibit schools, to talk about climate, this kind of thing. So those kind of distractions also gets a lot of attention. So even though we are talking more about climate, we are talking also about a lot of distraction that stop us from telling the relevant stories. So this is the context. Now I'm ready for the next side of this. That's how you can survive today working with us. So how a source can be an ally in this chaotic context. So the first thing I told you a bit before is this trusting your authority. That's something I realized participating in a TV program we have here in Brazil. It's called Roda Viva. Uh, it's a program in which the interviewer gets the center of the stage, and then he gets like surrounded by reporters. And the impression we have when you are watching that is that, oh, this guy is having a hard time. Like every side he looks, he's gonna find a reporter with a hard question to him. But what happens in reality? When I was there interviewing someone, I had this realization that what's happened really is that this guy is in the most comfortable position because he can just turn around. The time like he doesn't like this question, he turns around and you please make your question. And then, like he just shifts attention to another question. Or like he just answer briefly this one he didn't like, he's not comfortable with this one, and he moves forward to the next one, to the other side. So sometimes we have the impression that the reporter is the one conducting the interview. I mean, we are trained to do that, and what happens is that, as you saw this context I just shared in the previous slides, we are not being able to fully exercise this power of conducting the interview or conducting the narrative, or really being the one who says what's relevant or not, because we are overworked and we have each time more work with fewer journalists, younger journalists, journalists who are working one day in a policy story and the other day with economic policy story. So this context requires allies, sources who are reliable, who have a commitment to an agenda which is from public interest. So that's why I'm suggesting this approach of being an ally. Knowing that the reporter is just one trying to understand the story that you understand is something that is on your side. So you must trust your authority on the topic that you are sharing. And if someone is looking for you to tell a bit about that, even like if you feel, and I think that's another gender difference. Like I see much more in my woman colleagues this care, we are much more careful about like, am I the right person to say this? I'm not really, my doctorate is not really about this, it's about this, but it's like close enough to a reporter who is just like starting to think about that issue. So I think many times we would think that the reporter is going to require much from our knowledge, but what he needs most of the time is the basic. So don't assume that people know about your work, know about what you're talking about, they're familiar with that. Most of the times they are not. So you are the authority and you can guide the conversation, not just guiding the answers. Like the reporter asks about something that's not really what your interest, you can like give like a brief answer on that and move to what's really interesting to you. I'm going to explore this a bit more later in the next slide. But what I want to tell with guide the conversation is that aspect that I was sharing this with this at this TV program. Like if you don't like this, you can just like move to the question that you are interested, move to the story that you are interested in telling, and trust that you are the one who, as you are the one who knows things, you can be the one guiding the conversation. Uh, and that's my central topic, be an ally of the news. I I understand that the sources that are my favorite ones, the ones I trust and look for for many different topics, are the ones who I know that they are not interested in just getting a quote there. They're not just like being moved by the ego of like, oh, look, I'm there at the newspaper, like that's my quotes. No, they are really interested in moving that agenda. And when your interest is focused in moving the agenda, you can switch places for the one who provides the codes to the one who guides the story. So my commitment as someone who is guiding the agenda is to make sure that poor reporter will tell things right. So be available to correct things, to check things with him, to send data, to say, look, you wanna me to indicate someone else so you can tell a bit more about that example or that data, so you can like suggest other sources to this person. And so this place of helping the agenda to move forward clearly with correct information, with public interest at the heart of the story. It's something that's is a common interest we have, both advocates and reporters. So when you are talking from this place of someone who's really interested in getting the best story published, then you become like reporter's best friend and the person the reporter trusts. So it's a much more powerful place to be. So some careful things we should take into account when you have this place of being an ally is the first one is investing in a source reporter relationship. So it's this relationship that moves not just at the moment of the interview, but before and after. I'm going to talk a bit more about that. And pitching from the place of a source. So just like a careful thing about not slipping into the reporter's role. So every time you are suggesting something, just make sure you are not implying that the reporter doesn't know to do his job or something like that. Just being polite is something uh, that I think women do better. Like being polite and saying like, oh, if you want something else, if you need some detail on that story, and not assuming that you gonna control what the reporter is gonna tell. So that's the only thing that we should be careful about this place of being a ally of the news, like not assuming that the reporter doesn't know his job or needs someone to correct the text afterwards. That's something more delicate. Gonna move forward. Thank you. Yeah. So as I was saying, we can think of our work as advocates as a work that's moving the agenda and not just like putting a message there, a quote there. So we can focus in the pitch of the story more than just the quotes. And then there's a difference between being on and off the record. And I think many of you can be already familiar with this difference, but something that I like to cultivate with my sources, and it's something that you can negotiate as well, is like the way I do with my sources is like, I need you to tell me this story so I can really understand what's going on. And then after that, we can combine what's on the record and what's off the record. So you can think what's more comfortable to you depending on the story and the relationship you have with the reporter, if someone you know already or not. But then you can suggest like, let's talk off the records. Then afterwards, if there's something you want me to quote, you can suggest me the quotes, and I check if it's okay to me. Or then if someone you don't trust much and you're not comfortable to share a delicate context or something like that, then you can say, wow, let's talk only on the record. And then you being aware that you're on the record, you can filter what you wanted to be published or not. And then you just tell what you are aware that's going to be published, that can be published. Uh, I'm going to tell the background information first. The background information is like the off the records, but something that's not attributable. It's a small difference. Like when you say off the records, it means I'm gonna turn off the recorder, and I'm not going to say who gave me this information. So that's the time I can share a story saying, like, according to observers of the negotiations, this happened there, or this is moving this direction. And when it's background information, I'm not even attributing to someone from your sector. I'm just using that information to help me to piece the puzzle. So that's the main difference. And well, and that's this different timing for hot and cold stories. So when you have like this, but I think I shared enough of this already. But when you have this hot topic that's happening the same day, reporters many times we go for the source that they know they are available. So especially at COP, that we are most of the time focused on that work, like we're not living our day-by-day life with our different schedules, is a timing to invest in being available to the reporters. Because when you have like a urgent topic or something, like I new draft it, and I'm just like, I have 40 minutes to write something on the new draft of the negotiation. I'm just going to count on the codes I have ready, very fast. So the organizations who generally have like a code already sending to every report like 20 minutes after the next draft are the ones who are going to be at the press. And so when you are available to read the drafts and share an impression, you're going to be the one who's going to be there at the news story. Of course, when you have like a cold story, which means a story that's not urgent, it's something that you can build this relationship further with the reporter. You can have more than one call. You can, share documents, go deeper in this, invest more in this story. But at COP especially, it's important to have this, being aware of this fast timing. We can move forward. Thank you. So now being aware of this agenda, that's more than the message, I wanted to focus in the message, like when what's at stake or when your interest is just like making your points at that story, then what we should focus on is to get a balance between being powerful and being specific. I say that because many times we wanting to show the dimension of our topic, we get it much generic. So we get a phrase that shows how it revolves everything. And I do understand perfectly your place here, because I'm always trying to sell the relevance of climate agenda and gender agenda, and then together. And many times to do that, we get abstracted, we get too generic. So we have to show the dimension of this story, how relevant they are, how powerful they are, but also being specific. So to do that, what I recommend is to have in mind that's some homework I recommend you to prepare for COP. Is to have in mind this sum of facts, real consequence for people, perspective, solution, and clear demands. So that's something that's, if you're in the corridor at COP and someone approaches you to get your opinion on something random thing that's maybe not even your topic, and they relate to you for some reason to that topic and ask you a question. Okay, you can speak quickly on that, or even say, no, I don't talk about this topic. But then you have the chance to move to your scripts. So what's your script? What's the story you're coming to COP committed to share? So an issue that you're picking, the real consequence, the perspective solution, and a clear demand, probably related to COP, would be even more interesting. Yeah, you can move forward. So here I was talking the previous slides, that we need to have this balance between being powerful and being specific. So here I brought these examples because I have this powerful phrase: the consequences of the growing climate crisis are not gender neutral, and that must be addressed for effective climate solutions. It's super powerful, and every one of us understand how relevant this phrase is, but it's too generic. It's talking about everything and anything specifically at the same time. So I suggest like a shorter and a specific version in which they say women lose livelihoods, safety, and rights first. Climate policy that ignores this will not work. So it's just a sharper version that brings us an image of a person losing their community, their house, and it creates a more concrete scenario to then point to a critique or to a demand. And here I have an example of a story that I published at Folha de São Paulo. That's this main newspaper in Brazil. I got this from indigenous leader in a biodiversity negotiation, the CBD, and he says like this: first, we were displaced by coal, then by wind energy. And this was so specific, so clear, and then we have such a clear image in that this became the headline of the story. So if you can think of a way of shortening your view and shortening the image, the concrete reality to an image, higher is the chance of getting this to the headline, because then it becomes like a strong phrase that people get like surprised to see that, and so the chance that people are going to click at this link is higher as well. So you can move forward. Here's just like a very slight difference between the medias. So if you have the opportunity to give an interview to TV, it's important to have in mind that you are probably going to have like few seconds on there. Sometimes, like I was very extreme. Sometimes you have 30 seconds. Sometimes you can have like 10 seconds, just like one sharp phrase. So it's good to keep like short phrases and be very direct to the points, having in mind one key message, one example, having in mind the 6 to 10 seconds phrase, because then if they like one phrase that was like super powerful, like they can cut just that. And of course, avoid lists, avoid technical terms, avoid those terms who need much explanation that we can give to a print reporter, to a web news reporter. But in TV, you're not going to have this opportunity to have so much time in there to explain that. And energy and confidence, like the way you appear in TV matters. Like so many times I worked in TV some years ago, and it was such a shame to get to waste interviews with brilliant people who would not like show how brilliant they are, because they talk in a monotonous way, like in a way that are not engaging people, that are not showing how they care about that situation. So you can like explore this visual aspect, this engaging emotional aspects. And when you are in a radio or podcast, you can bring this emotion, this energy to your voice. Also the urgency and how you care about this can be carried by your voice. This is and also in radio is super relevant when you can describe those concrete images that we were talking in the previous slides, like, oh, women are the one carrying the bucket for water, women are the one doing, and then people are gonna create that movie in their heads. Can move. When print and online, that's why I love printed media and online, because you have more space for nuance. So many stories that I'm not able to tell in TV or radio because it misses image, it misses a concrete story. It will have space for more abstract or more nuance, more delicate issues to appear in the written media. So that's where you have space to share more data, indicate more sources, go deeper on numbers, on scientific papers, because we can take advantage of that. We just need words. And when you are talking with international media, just reminds of translating the local terms. Like I put Ribeirinhos here because it's the situation we have in Brazil with many communities living next to the rivers. So how do you translate? Just have in mind some of those terms that if you wanted to share a story of your place, what's the term that's universal audience can have an idea of what I'm talking about. Yeah, and having in mind, I think that's very easy to you, but having in mind always how you connect the local stories to the global consequences. So just let the reporter, that's super important at COP. As we are at the global conference, many times people are going there with the hope that they're gonna make their issue or their study or their story show up at COP and get attention at COP. So, but we have this confusion. I think if you've been there before, you know that's what's the level of competition of stories there. So, if you wanted to highlight your story, it's important that you can connect it very clearly with the global consequences and also with what's being negotiated there at COP. You can move. Um, so this is related to what I showed before, a bit of the homework that's important to take to COP. So what are my main messages? To have like 2 or 3 points, phrases, that's something that you have to have in mind for any conversation you're having. 2 data points that's super important to support you, especially when the talk becomes a bit harder. I'm going to share more of this, but having like some numbers, like 13 million people are being affected for days by year, according to and concrete stories, like stories in the territory, stories of communities, rural people, urban people, like showing that's a human challenge. A perspective, a solution. I put one solution, but don't care about the number, like a perspective solution, so people can realize that that you have proposals and want them to COP, like always linking these concrete stories in the territory with COP30. That's a good recipe that I would recommend you to take to COP. So during the interview, the next slide, um, it's just a summary of what I talked before. Keep short sentence and clear points. By clear points, I mean sometimes we want to explain to the reporter a whole narrative to confirm something that you wanted to state, and we just have like sometimes to get shorter pathways to come to that point, because many times the reporter not like keep paying attention to us. And we were also in general we were usually very anxious people. You were all the time like under pressure, and you were telling me a story, but I'm thinking of other 2 or 3 stories that I should be sending today. So should I pay attention to this or should I pay? So we are easily distractible. So being like very direct to your point will help to get the attention from the reporter. Keeping it simple, clear, and human, so not too technical, avoiding acronyms or explaining them every time we can. Like we speak basically in the language of acronyms in UNFCCC, to say another acronym. But I think we can every time we say one of them, we can like just explain what they mean. Yeah, and that's the point I told you before. Don't suppose they already know what we're talking about. Most of the times they will not have a clue about that. And after the interview, the next slides, I think I'm gonna need more 10 minutes here. So hard talks, when the interview becomes a bit difficult. If you don't know a thing, don't be embarrassed to say so. Just say like, oh, that's not my topic. I'm not specialized in this. I can, sometimes you can say, oh, I can, if you prefer to talk about this, I can indicate someone else or check if a colleague of mine will be the adequate person to that. I'm not the adequate person to this question. So there's no problem to that at all. But also check if you can't help on anything, because sometimes we are not like the super expert on that topic, but we would know enough to what that report needs. That's many times more basic than what we are requiring for ourselves. So just check these before saying no. But of course, if you're not comfortable, don't push for it. Just say no and come back to your message. Like, oh, that's not really my topic. I'm more into this specific, this specific story in water, on adaptation, and you move on that. Like, oh, that's not with me. When you have like a hostile question, just keep in mind though that homework of having 2 data points or facts, like having numbers, being clear about what's the real life consequence of that, and the demand for COP. So for instance, like, oh, I don't know, finance, you can like putting a number of how many people are being affected by disasters that are not counting on any adaptation funds or loss and damage funds or whatever is the issue being asked there, and then moving to what the consequence for those lives, and then what COP should do about that. When you do that, you can escape from most of those tricky questions. And just have in mind that many times the reporter is not the malicious one doing that question. Many times they do a trick questions to represent the kind of questions that the audience is pointing all the time on social media, or deniers are raising this question. So they can provoke you with questions that do not represent what that person is thinking, but represent what many will think of you or of your work. So it's good to be prepared to that, not like trying to being emotional of that. So, but just like bring the number, bring the facts, bring the real life consequence, and then you can keep safe on the topics that you are the experts, and don't engage emotionally on that. So when you're dealing with misinformation or attacks, not emotion, just facts. Don't feed the trolls. Just correct something very clearly, very neutral. And if you need to amplify a message to correct some misinformation, then you go for your allies in the press. That's why it's important also to build this relationship with reporters, that you can have that you can have a trust relationship. So when you have like some misinformation in course, you can go for them. Yeah, thank you. Next one. So that's something that we often forget. But after the interview, we will
Good
still.
morning. Good Dorothy from the.
After the interview, you also can keep in touch with the reporter, and that's super important for building this relationship, to keep supporting the story. So as having in mind, as we have this agenda, we have interest in the agenda and not just in the codes. So it's important for us to have this story published. So we want to be an ally during the whole process. So after the interview, you can send documents, send data, share contacts of experts or communities, offer to clarify anything later. I love when someone says this. If you have any doubts later, please reach me, and say, oh, I probably will when I'm writing this, because sometimes you are writing and piecing together the different perspectives, and you think of something that you didn't have this doubt before. So it's good to have someone available to check things, and offer to review technical data for accuracy. So don't ask the reporter to send the text. Oh, sorry, that's a cultural thing. In Brazil, We don't have this culture of sharing the text, but this depends on the culture, because I was like in Germany once, and in Germany they are used to checking the story, checking the text of the reporter before publishing it. So that's something that we should be careful about, because depending on the culture, this can be perceived as a controlling attempt. That's how it's perceived in Brazil. But depending on the country of the reporter, it's a different culture. It's more friendly, and they can chat things. But so you should be careful when suggesting that you can chat things. I would suggest to make like a very broad question, like if you wanted me to check something for accuracy, not for controlling the narrative, but just for accuracy, then I'm available to that. Yeah, and just make sure that you are in touch, you are in contact, you have the right contacts to each other. And this is very nice. Send updates later. We were the worst as a reporter, following up on the stories we tell. That's something that we learn at the college, and we never practice because we're in this chaotic newsroom scenario, as I told you. And normally, like we don't go back to check how the story evolved or not. So it's very good to count on you to send a message later and say, oh, this changes or this did not change. Can you believe? And this helps a lot as well. Next one. So I'm going to be very quickly on COP30, but I just wanted to remind you that at COP we have a very different work between the reporters. So normally during the year we are competing to each other, and during COP we are most of the times collaborating to each other. So those moments that you can put reporters together to give a brief, to know, to have a huddle or a class. I put classes here because many times at COP, like I have real class, like I learn a lot with those sources who are available to grab people like in the corridors, at a cafe, and just like sit together and explain very informally what's going on there. So this is super helpful. The agility counts a lot. So how if you can be fast in answering and being really available, it's something that makes a difference. And there's a significant difference between the first week and the second week of COP. And at the first week, we have a slow move on the negotiations. There are more technical negotiations, and we don't have really much news to tell. So reporters are usually more available to tell other stories. So if you're bringing to COP, stories of your own territory, of your community, of what you're doing in your country, the first week is a very interesting time to explore the context of the reporter and to make those links. And the second week, we have fewer reporters on the site. Like if you visit the press room, you're going to see like they're empty, and they're more focused on the negotiation. So it's a time that's it's harder, especially for the reporters who cover negotiations. It's harder to get opportunities to tell other stories. And my last remind, I think the last slide, is that COP happens in the corridors. And I like to use this picture to remind you that, because here you have John Kerry and you have this fly just after him, which was me trying to get a quick interview or replying on some story that was going on, that was in Marrakesh in COP32. And also this COP, I was a beginner at COP. It was my second COP, and I will very quickly tell this story because I was a bit lost at the first days of COP, not much happening, and I had to report to this big daily newspaper, and I bumped into an environmentalist from a big NGO, and asking him what we're doing here, and he said, "Well, I'm writing an article protesting against coal's incentives in Brazil." And I said, "Oh, I think I'm going to write about this because I don't have anything else to write." And I published this story at Folha de São Paulo, telling that Brazil is under pressure to remove coal incentive under pressure at COP. And this had like an incredible repercussion that I did not expect, because that was read by the governor, the president, and they decided to veto that project. So it's just an example that COP, even though it seemed to be isolated from reality because they are negotiating something that nobody can enter the room or influence that the general perception that the public opinion have on COPs, at least here. But many times, like, we can make this link, and the perfect COP comes back to the territory, and vice versa. So I really encourage you to take advantage of those corridors and go mix yourselves with other kinds of people, like reporters and diplomats, and take advantage from this exchange to produce news, because sometimes they do make a difference. That was it. I'm open to questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that. It's a really incredible overview. And I think just to say, as folks think of any questions that they might have, and please, this is our interactive session. And so I think there's also an opportunity for you to share some of the maybe challenges that you might be having right now as you're putting together your own preparation for COP, as we're on our way very quickly to the space. I also want to say that, you know, we as a collective, in working together and supporting each other, hoping that this recipe for what we're bringing, as well as what does it mean to actually shape the narrative and to tell stories, especially because there's so many of us who are supporting and who are shepherding frontline activists into a space, or are frontline activists ourselves, that, you know we have a small window of time to use this moment to perhaps tell a big story. I really love that last example of how a chance meeting. I've certainly had that happen at COP. I feel like you do all the preparation in advance that you want to and feel like you can, in terms of media planning, and then it really comes down to being in the right place with the right people, where you get that opportunity. But really, you do need to be prepared for it. So when someone turns around and says, "What are you doing here?" you have a compelling story to tell. So let me see. I'm not sure if I see any hands. I'm also not on the right view to be able to see hands. Oh, Catherine. Catherine, please get us started. I have some questions myself, too. I'm going to write them down so I can ask you. Go ahead, Catherine.
Thanks so much, Bridget, and thank you, Ana Carolina. This was a really wonderful presentation. I took so many notes, and definitely looking forward to bumping into you and other reporters in those corridors. So just appreciate you coming and sharing all your wisdom with us. I do communications for one of our organizations, and just as Bridget shared, supporting frontline delegates from Brazil and other territories, and trying to consider, we have things like press conferences where we prep media advisories, but also how to support the facilitation between reporters and, people who will be on the delegation speaking. And if you had any insights on the ways to facilitate that, or make those connections easy for you all to engage with people in those stories, as well as, do media advisories work for you? Maybe point blank, we put those together for the press conferences within the Blue Zone, and just kind of curious if those are effective ways to get press in the room to hear people's stories and analysis. Thank you so much.
Do you
Thank
want
you,
me to
Catherine.
do you want to do one by one questions, or to take a few? It's up to you. We have time,
If
so.
we have time, if
Yeah.
you have time, I would go one by one.
Great, perfect.
Very quickly. I'm going to try to be quick. Very good question. I'm not an example on that, because I'm usually not going on those press conferences, because I would be rather in the corridors. But I'm not a reference for that, because I see many colleagues of mine paying very much attention to those press conferences. I usually go to the press conference in the beginning to understand who are the people So, like, oh, that's the speaker person for this organization. That's the speaker person for that delegation. So I'm more into this radar of who I should talk to in the corridors when I meet those people, more than the content of the press conference. But that's very specific of what I'm looking for. I see that many reporters, especially in the first days of the conference, need context. Like, they are desperate for context. And so I think it's super helpful to hold those press conferences in some key moments. I think it would be more interesting to have in the beginning to have those contextual information, and in key moments, like when you have like a critical drafted that nobody knows exactly, is that a bad story that I'm telling, or what's the story I'm telling here? So that's a key moment to have this press conference. And of course, in the end, we're also looking for those comments and reactions. The meet advisory helps me, because even if I don't go to the press conference because I'm busy between many other things happening simultaneously, I can take advantage of the meet advisory. So that's some the written text that I can even sometimes paste in my text very quickly, just to piece together a story. So it's super helpful. And how to facilitate the relation between report and delegates. I think that you can, I don't know, it depends on the size of the organization, but I think the one by one in the corridors can grow into huddles, because like you can share, like I saw sometimes it happening, like, oh, I can give you a briefing if you're interested. My delegate is like following this topic and something's hot there, but nobody's noticing. So if you want, we can meet at 30 p.m. 3 p.m. in this cafe here, like, and then it gets growing, so it becomes like a huddle with like two journalists, like you bring a colleague, sometimes this it grows many times, like you have like a closed meeting. Sometimes I think I'm gonna have like an exclusive meeting with my source, and then we'll have like 3 journalists, 4 journalists, and in the next day it happens again with like 5 or 6. So I really recommend to use those informal gatherings at COP to brief journalists.
Thank you for that. Gina, I saw you had a hand up. Did you want to come in with a question?
Yes, thank you so much. I come in and complement a bit on the question on the advisory, because I wanted to understand better which are the best timings that work for you in terms of receiving information. Like, perhaps it can be that if you receive it too in advance, you can forget about it, but if you receive it too late, it might be too late. So like, for example, if we're doing a press conference or if we're doing a manifestation, let's say at 11 a.m., like, at what time is a suitable time for you to say, oh, please send it? It's better when we send things the night before. It's better when you send the things an hour so that people report on that, kind of a little bit to understand the timings in those urgent moments. And the other question was around advisory or to create media attention, for example, in terms of manifestations, like it is like, which could be your tips in terms of, okay, a manifestation alone might not be interesting enough for a news, but perhaps if you link it in this way to this and this and that, it can be like a more compelling story. Or I don't know, which can be as well your tips for us to then create this more, because I think that one of the things that we often do is that we have a lot of stories, or we do like a lot of actions, we do a lot of advocacy work, bilaterals, but then the communicating and connecting these different elements perhaps is something that we're missing. So yeah, these 2 questions. Thank you.
Very interesting. Thank you. About the press conference, if it's a code, I think that's all about timing on both cases. So if you have like a hot story, something that's urgent, something that's very much related to the moment of the negotiations, so you can have like a last minute press conference, and maybe have someone at the door of the press room telling everybody this gossip of, like, people are talking now. So if it's an urgent topic, people will pay attention to that. Then your last minute press conference can have a strong interest from reporters. But if it's a colder story, like if you're launching a study, or if you're sharing the story of something that you want to call attention for that's happening outside COP, then it's good to be in the beginning of COP and be very much publicized as before. So I think that the night before, like if it's happening at 11 a.m., it's good to know about that at least like 6 p.m. on the day before. And then just 1 hour before, it's good to have that alarm as well. I appreciate very much the time they remind me, like, oh, you know that in 1 hour you're going to be there. It's always helpful. But if it's a colder story, it's good to have it well prepared, so you can be not just like telling the time of that press conference, but also like convincing the reporter this story they should pay attention to that. And also we are a jealous kind of people. Like if we think that, oh, that's a story that everybody's paying attention to, like it's a momentum. Like German Watch do that very well every COP. They have the publication of that the risk, the countries that more at the risk. Every year they have that ranking, and I don't know, they publicize that in a way that every time we go there, we pay attention to that study. You know, like which country is the one that's the most vulnerable this year? Like I want to tell the story. Other organizations that do that very well is the corporate accountability, that every year they publish the number of lobbyists. Like they always like prepare this in such advance that we're all like, no, it's now, it's today, it's tomorrow. We're paying attention to that. So if you create, if you are able to be repeating that over and over again, like during like 3-4 days, if supposing it's like on Friday, like if you go repeating that over the week, so we're gonna get like more, oh, this today, that thing that I heard 3 times already, you know, so we get more attentive. Another solution would be to give an exclusive, because sometimes we get like, oh, that if it's not like a story that's gonna be spread all over, maybe choosing a journalist of your trust, like to give it first, can also help to raise the attention to that. Like some, you know, some relevant vehicle give it first, and then people pay more attention and go after those datas or those stories. So it's something that we should analyze case by case, but also a solution depending on the kind of the story. And on manifestation, very quickly, sorry. I think that the manifestation, it's important to be, it's about timing again. It's important to be linked to the context of what's happening right now at COP. So if you choose like a very key critical moment, you can have like everybody there or anybody there. If you're like, if it sounds too parallel or too distant of what's the main fire at COP at the moment.
Perfect. Osprey?
Thank you so much, Ana Carolina. This has been really helpful, and thank you, WEDO, for organizing this. This is really, really excellent. Just it's a two-part question. One is how can we best also approach reporters with the fact that a lot of the work that many of us are doing is really a new intervention that not necessarily is the conventional dialogue that is going on. And it is directly addressing what is happening at COP, and it is directly related to the negotiations, but we're purposefully bringing in a new alternative narrative. It's not new, but it is not the traditional conventional approach, and convey that this is actually critical to the conversation. And it's outside of a lot of the dialogue that is going on. So, you know, I'm just curious how we can best get attention to also the fact of so many false solutions and false narratives, that we're there to intervene and to get attention for those kinds of interventions, including sharing not just the kind of work that we're advocating for, but also reports that we're putting out that are really challenging the norms. So I would love to hear more about that. And the last thing is a very practical thing, which is, you know, it's not always easy to meet all the right reporters. Sorry for all the noise. All the right reporters at the right time. And we know, as an example, that there's a section of the COP that's dedicated to all the media, and their cameras are set up and all of their media folks are going there. Is it appropriate or odd to just simply go down the aisle and introduce yourself? I mean, the reporters are there, the journalists are there, and just approach people who are in their booth and talk to them.
Very good questions. I share with you this question about how to be published, having like a new mindset to that approach, and I'm thinking of some practical solutions to that. One is like to choose. I remember when I put that headline of that indigenous leader saying like, "Oh, you were like out of here because of coal and now because of wind." So in that phrase, in a very simple way, he were able to show us, tell a very complex story, which is not just about changing the fuel, the kind of source of energy. It's like we have to change the whole approach about how we deal with the communities. So I think that first homework that is interesting to do is to translate this new mindset, this new approach to concrete stories in those like very sharp, concrete phrases. And I know it's hard to do that, but when you find those phrases like that one, you can have a headline. So you can have you can pitch to reporters Q&A interviews with a leadership who's able to to find those sharp phrases, or an exclusive reporter. But I think like we can like first choose the phrase and then choose the journalists who are gonna receive this exclusive, this bombastic. So we have some very sensitive, not sure if that's the right word. Like we have people who are open to those new ways of thinking, but they need to convince their editors. They need to convince their audience that approach is relevant. So I think those sharp and concrete approaches can help to sell the story to a journalist. And the other thing is, when I was telling you about building this relationship with the reporter, I think that's also about how you can, through this relationship, show that you are serious about that story. So, there's a climate organization that's called We Mean Business. And I like very much that approach, because many times climate solutions are seen as like not serious. Let's talk about serious things now. Let's talk about geopolitics. So how can we show that what we are proposing, it's also serious and relevant? I think many times through building this relationship with a reporter. So every time the guy has a doubt on the adaptation negotiation, like you are there for him, So you're gonna like each time adding a bit of this critical approach, and we became like fans of you, because like, oh, every time this person has something so clever and different to say, they're not repeating over and over the same talking point that ever observer is giving me. Like she's always like giving me something different. So I think building this relationship is something that's also can open this space to show how relevant is this new way of thinking.
Thank you for this. I think these have all been super helpful. And maybe to close it off, which is sort of a round out to Osprey's last question as well, which was, we have all the tips and all of these ideas and the homework that we want to do. And sometimes it is just about meeting the right people. And so to this point of, I think Osprey's last part of that question was, what can we physically do in the space when we're present in the space to use that moment of the first week to build relationships if we don't have them necessarily prior going to COP? So how do we use the press space? And my question, because it's really helpful to get those examples of, this, report that we can count on by German Watch is something we pay attention to because of the way that it's shared and the consistency of it. It's always really helpful to have models that have been successful. So I just wonder, in these last 3 minutes that we have of you, any other experiences that you've had, media briefings that you've gotten, or a way that someone has introduced themselves to you that you've found, or an action someone has hosted at COP that you found really successful and helped you write a story to close us out.
Nice. Yeah, I think consistency is a key, something that we can count on. On these first days of COP, I like the idea of having this initial press conference, and I think the gender action plan is a huge opportunity to get this attention, because I think I told you this before. Like, as it is a COP that doesn't have like a clear mandate for a very big deal that has to happen this COP. So we can have this opportunity to say, okay, we can tell you what you should look for. So those first days of COP, it's a very important moment to create a press conference, or even those informal huddles, like to grab some lost journalists around and just like put them together and say, okay, I'm gonna tell you what's happening here, what's at stake, and what's our take on it. And I also asked if it's okay to enter the press room. It's generally they don't allow, but at some point, like, they don't check your badge. Personally, I don't like much when I'm there, because I'm working on something, if my mind on something, and then someone asks to introduce me organization, and my mind is not on that. But I think that if the person is not like writing on something and you're interrupted, just like having coffee or something, it's nice to introduce yourself and tell about your work. Yeah, so I think physically, my advice is like be in the corridors, available to meet people. Also in the press conference, sometimes like you don't even have a press conference schedule of your own, but you can join the press conference of European Union, or if they don't let you in, because sometimes they allow, sometimes they don't. But be around on that door or the plenary, and be attentive to the badge, like you have that origin badge as press. And so at the same way that I'm attentive to your badges to look who you are, like you could be as well, and taking a look at that. And also joining groups. I think that big organizations have groups of journalists that they keep sending briefings. So like maybe as you are super well connected, like you could like join also those groups to have a bit more of those, taking advantage of those networks.
Thank you so much. We're just at time, so that was really perfect. And I think this has given us a huge amount to work with in terms of how we can coordinate better and really use the moment, as you said, of having an official item on the agenda around gender equality to bring our broad feminist vision of feminist climate justice into multiple opportunities with different press and media. So super grateful for your time. As a reminder to folks, if you have any other colleagues, partners who you are bringing, we have this recorded. We're going to work on some sort of tips and tricks from it as well to share out on paper. But we also have one additional session a few hours from now. It's 1:00 Eastern time. And that will also it will be done in Portuguese, but we'll also have translation. So please invite your partners to join that as well. Clau, any other closing thoughts from you? And of course, and always gratitude to our interpreters for the support. Over to you, Clau, for anything else.
No, I think that captures it so well, Bridget, and thank you so much, Carol, for your time today. We really, really appreciated it, and thank you for the interpreters. And yeah, we'll be following up with materials, recording, and wish you a great rest of the day. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. And I keep available as well. We're going to be there. So see you all there, I hope.
Thank you.